Dilemma.
Here's a dilemma. At some point in their lives, every kid will ask the question, where did I come from? Maybe they won't sound like that, a recent survey shows more than half of high school students want to learn about sex sooner. And while parents often skirt the talk, teachers aren't confident they're up to the job either.
Yeah, around 80% of school teachers don't feel comfortable giving their students lessons on sex, leaving too many kids clueless about the birds and the bees.
So is sex ed the parents' or the school's responsibility, and what's the right age for it? With us in the studio to tackle this dilemma is comedian Fiona O'Loughlin, commentator and author of Laid Bare, Jessie Fink, and sexologist Dr. Nikki Goldstein joins us live from LA. Good morning to you all. Thanks for joining us.
Everyone.
Fiona, let's start with you. You're a mum of 5. You've probably been through the chat once or twice. Should kids be learning about sex from their parents or from their teachers at school?
I think it's wrong to give the burden to teachers. I really think it's the parents' responsibility. Having said that, I skirted it. I know.
5 times?
I got out of there 5 times. I know.
It sounds like perhaps your mum skirted it as well.
I come from a long line of skirters. But I think now it's different now. My youngest is 15, so it was way before, you know, we've got so much information. You know, any kid can Google sex. The cat's out of the bag now. So
Right.
I think I'd do it differently if I was mothering now. I'd get in there early and do it myself.
Okay. Jessie, your daughter will be a teenager soon. Are you worried about where she's getting all her info from?
Yeah, she comes home from school talking about sexing, and of course I ask her, what does that mean? She doesn't want to sort of tell me about it.
Yeah.
But I disagree with Fiona. I think it's the responsibility of schools and parents to teach sex education. And I actually rang my daughter's school yesterday and said, what do you provide for, you know, kids in my daughter's year, which is year 3? They said nothing. And they bring in outsourced educators in year 5 and year 6, which I think is way too late, because kids are talking about sex in the playground now in years 3 and 4, and they're developing early as well.
I think you're right, the internet's sort of changed the game altogether. Over to you, Nikki, there in LA, and according to a recent survey, the sex conversation is not happening in 20% of Aussie homes. So why do you reckon so many mums and dads sort of dodge the chat? And it's sort of quite a historical thing to do, right?
Well, I think when we start off with sex education, we just assume that they're too young, and then we go through those stages where we think, oh, it's a little bit too awkward, and then they get to teenage years and we say, oh, well, they know it all anyway because, you know, they've been reading magazines or they've been looking on the internet. So we really do miss out having the birds and bees, but I think instead of looking at what age we should start, it needs to be something that's done from the beginning, and not necessarily explaining to them the specifics of sex, but in the way of saying, you know, what our body parts are called, and, you know, breasts and vagina are the same as an elbow and a nose. So it normalises that kind of dialogue between parents and children from the very beginning, so it doesn't have to be so awkward.
Fiona, I kind of take Nikki's point in that you go, they're too young. Oh, now it's a bit awkward. Oh, now they're too old. But the window of opportunity does tend to sort of pass us by.
If I had my time over again, I'd do it much earlier, you know, and I would do it.
What age do you think is a good age?
I don't think it can be too young, really, to start talking about, you know, body parts and what you know, that's your penis, that's your vagina, you know, one...
You look at him when he said, when you say one and then immediately...
I reckon a 6-year-old can wrap their head around where...
Sure. Absolutely.
How you get a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, anthropologically, this is a very new conundrum, really, because once upon a time, when families lived in one dwelling, it was often one room, you know, kids knew where babies came from because they saw them come out, you know.
True.
Yeah, Jessie, why talk about sex? In my favourite documentary, American Pie, there's a scene where the dad walks in on the son and he's reading a magazine. The dad has to take it for granted that the son knows everything from the magazine. The internet is the modern version of that. So there are parents who think, why do we have to teach kids if they can, and they will, Google this stuff?
Well, in my day, you know, I would see my first naked woman in a copy of Playboy around the age of 11, and now it's happening to kids around the age of 8 and 9, and they're getting it on iPhones or the internet. And there's some pretty graphic things on the internet. You just type something into Google and, you know, hey presto.
Or not, you can end up in those by mistake, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I want her to be able to come to me and be reassured about what healthy sex is.
Yeah.
and not to be frightened by what she sees on the internet.
Okay.
You just stop your dad in faffing Playboys, by the way.
Nikki, is there any sort of research that shows if children know more about sex, they're more likely to do it? What does the research tell us about that?
Well, there's a lot of studies out there that do contradict each other, but one of the ones that I always look at is that adequate sex education increases the age at which children first have sex. But the problem here is I think we need to stop obsessing so much about at what age children are having sex and look at that the age that they do start having sex, are they being safe, are they responsible? And this is one of the issues with age of consent. You know, is everyone when they're 16 you know, in the right frame of mind to be having sex? And this is where the education needs to come in to make sure at whatever age they are having sex, keeping in mind, you know, we don't want our kids having sex at too much of a young age, but we need to start focusing on that they are ready emotionally, they have all the facts, they're being responsible, rather than obsessing about this number that's going to change from person to person.
All right, Fiona, Jessie and Nikki, interesting dilemma. We thank you for your help with it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, team. We ran a poll on Facebook earlier asking you who should be teaching kids about sex ed.
A mere 3% of you said it's the school teacher's responsibility. 5% thought it's sort of, you know, up to mums and dads. And a whopping 92% said both teachers and parents have a role to play in this.
I'll give you my experience with that both. And this, Jessie, this comes back to you when you rang the school. It happened in Year 4 for Gus, and it was they brought in, you know, the specialists, and it was an information night and parents had to attend, and also the kids, and they had the people there who really knew how to explain it to a bunch of 9-year-old kids, and it was amazing, according to my husband who went. Because I was busy that night.
Bit awkward for you?
Well, no, I really was busy. I had a work function to attend, but it kind of worked out great.
No,
Gus could go with his dad.
I know when you have work functions, you didn't have a work function that night.
Anyway, it worked great. The school working in conjunction with the kids, being taught not by the teachers who they see every day, but by specialists who, you know, had a really great way. They had to get up on stage and pretend to be sperm and eggs.
Well, that's going to make our revenge skit look stupid.
No, they did. Tony said it was great.
Failing that, if it's still not tough enough to handle it with the kids, just sit them in front of the morning show every now and again, because we'll get to most of this over the next week or so. Head to our Facebook page and let us know exactly what you think. Great to see you guys. Thank you so much. Just ahead for you, baby news. Baby news out of Kylie's school night.
Because they loved each other very much.
Yes. Here's 2 Hollywood people, one of whom jumped up on stage as a sperm. Anyway, we're going to tell you who's expecting soon some baby news out of Hollywood.
They had some beautiful special cuddles. But first, Karen's back and chooses live.
You so didn't have anything on
Thanks
that.
for that.